going to be a very hectic 24 to 48 hours. Not that otherwise it's not a hectic schedule. He's just agreed to give us some time to speak with us on the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the security situation. The DGP of J&K, Shri R.R. Swain. Namaste. Thank you very, very much for your time, sir. Happy Independence Day. But even as we speak, the forces are busy trying to keep this region secure. How would you assess the situation currently?
In broad terms, I would say that while there are challenges, but we are very much in control of the things. When I say that, I'm talking about the lives of ordinary citizens in the valley of Kashmir and in large parts of Jammu goes on, and the businesses, the schools, the education, hospitals, roads, electricity, public services, they are very much alive and active. Tourism, pilgrimage, we haven't stopped any of the, there has not been any disruption in that sense of the term. So we take satisfaction from the fact that the highly disruptive phase is over or is in the past, and we have travelled a distance which is visible, measurable, quantifiable, and therefore the overall scenario is one where a common citizen is in a position to go about his life. But at the same time, I qualified it with saying that we have challenges, and the challenges are primarily emanating from foreign terrorists. The external source of the challenge is something which has been spiked or has been ratcheted up by the adversary. So that is something which we are looking at.
One of the important aspects, Sahab, is the presence of FTs in Jammu and Kashmir, especially in the Jammu region.
Right.
Now, how did they come in, and is this a different challenge altogether? I'll come to the local recruitment in a bit, the silver lining in a bit, but the FTs first.
Yeah, the number of the foreign terrorists has always been a matter of debate, discussion, because for obvious reasons. So they do not have roots here, their names, their origin, their identity, their particulars are not always available. So we have a mechanism of calculating as to how many foreign terrorists are there at a given point of time, and it is a fact that since last about 3-4 months, I think a major push was made from the side of the adversary, trying to explore every bit of gap. There are places where we have plains but which are amenable to tunnels. There are riverines which are amenable to flash floods and then gaps. There are then jungles and the forests and the snow bound areas. So it's a vast stretch of territory. So what we believe in broad terms, I think what we have understood between ourselves amongst all forces and agencies is that there has been a tremendous effort and spike. As we say, most agencies agree that across the adversary is fully packing its launch pads and trying to push in as many people as possible. For the first time in last about almost 3+ decades, I think the number of foreign terrorists is almost 6-7 times more than the local terrorists. In fact, the local terrorists, as I speak, is roughly about 20 plus minus, and the assessments have been varying between agencies, but broadly speaking, we say it would be almost about 5 or 6 times more when it comes to the foreign terrorists.
Foreign terrorists.
Yes.
Now, there are two ways. One, this can be looked at, how did they get in? The other way to look at it is that they are being forced to push them in. So, is there a drop in local support, local recruitment?
Yes, you see, I mean, these are hard facts. There is no embellishment or there is no glossing over. The fact of the matter is that in 2024, 23, there was the drop in the local recruitment was very sharp. So roughly from about 150 to 200 recruitments about 3 or 4 years ago, the trend had started since last 4 years dropping southwards, but the real fall came in 2023, 22 later part, but actually 23, where from about 100 odd terrorists, it came down to 20 or less than that. So this year, for example, it has been around 5 or 6, it's a single digit, and this is certainly a different scenario. It makes a lot of difference to the security situation. And you see, no doubt, there is absolutely no gainsaying that two desperados who are suicide oriented can be very dangerous and can be very harmful. But then, please understand that the fear factor that comes to the public, the ordinary man is threatened more by a system, a kind of a arrangement by the adversary, where it tries to say that it is mapping, it is taking note of each citizen, each villager, each native, that if they are not with them, with their agenda and with their activities, and then they are being marked.
How did you go about doing this? This is my next question. Because what we see is, many would say, don't look at the person or the group that is pelting the stone. Look at the people who are propping them up. Don't look at the people who are coming to crowd the streets. Look at the people who are propping them up. There is a system in the shadows. And you're saying that you've been able to work to try and negate that system, to alleviate this basic inherent fear that you're saying in the minds of the people कि मेरे आजू बाजू कोई देख तो नहीं रहा है मुझे. How did you do it?
Well, actually, you prefaced it appropriately. The point is that, you see, a year ago we said that every recruit into the terror ranks will be treated as a victim, and till such time, of course, he has actually conducted a real terrorist violent act. But otherwise, intrinsically, we try to find out as to who were behind the recruitment, who really pushed him into it. The families are poor, invariably, less resourced, educationally backward. Under such circumstances, who are the people who are in a range of supporting activities, starting from legitimizing the ideology, glorifying death, making it a shortcut for a person who is not well off and who has not made it, who has not been able to really earn a livelihood and is vulnerable, taking advantage of those vulnerabilities. Which are these people? Which are these elements within the society? Be it within the, the education system, be it within the religious endowments or the systems, or within the government, or within the local business community, whoever it could be, the entire setup of the societal institutions that surround village life or small little towns. Who are these people who are making it absolutely possible, feasible, desirable, and perhaps in certain ways making it, may I say, a compelling set of circumstances to push him to take that gun. Okay. So we found it out. I mean, we really tried to study hard, and we also, in that effort, we did not spare ourselves. In a joint effort with the Indian Army, we tried to carry out a program in which we did a lot of self-introspection. To what extent, let's say, people allege that there have been heavy-handed behavior of the army and the security forces and the police. So to what extent that has contributed, that also we factored in. Having done that, we came to the conclusion that actually the real forces which push such people into terror ranks are the ones who are part of this side of the system. So they are behind the scene. Many of them are who are pulling the strings, and they are not being held accountable. I'll tell you what example in which a father used to repeatedly come to me saying, there is a local businessman who was responsible for putting my son into it. Now he is arrested and he is rotting in the jail. I have been coming to the police again and nobody does anything about him. So this was even, this went up right up to the within the army also, a very senior commander. They approached and the LG called me up and he said, isko jara dekho kya hai. So we carried out an investigation and we found out that this fellow wedded to the Jamaat was the one who was behind making it all possible and incentivizing it in so many ways and creating also a narrative and an ideology in which, he was had a tentacle kind of a thing. So a vast majority of common citizens and law-abiding persons had no way of standing up to this because the bullies were very powerful, very well connected, and had gamed the system that it looked almost impossible for the vast majority of the common citizens that isko kabhi hum वाकई में इनसे बच पाएंगे, इनकी ताकत और इनकी, is it ever possible that the vast network and the influence they have come to yield within the system, can it ever be really degraded? Can we really ever be able to stand up and be able to say that नहीं मुझे क्लास में आज पढ़ाना है and still I will be able to survive or remain out of fear and not be harmed this way or that way? So that kind of a situation was there, and when the rule of law, the wheels of law, as I say, the long arms of the law was made to operate, gradually the degradation of the adversaries started taking place. Their influence within the system came down, and it is a virtuous cycle which came to be setting. The entire rule of law was operating under the shadow of fear.
Fear. So you had to remove that shadow.
And they had created that shadow. It was under their shadow. So how can the tormentor, how can the person who has created the shadow of fear and terror say to the other side that the rule of law is not there and you are not following the rule of law? It is in fact during the last 3 or 4 years, you look at the judgment, very, I would say very landmark judgment I think yesterday has been passed, in which the Honorable High Court, a division bench, has said in so many words that properties pertaining to religious places, temples, etc., were all usurped and encroached by sheer, because the system had collapsed, or the fear of the gun had pervaded in such a manner. It is not that every time the gun wielding man goes to every single temple and every single religious place and says that it happens because of that network. They have only 2 gunmen. The threat that we will be able to execute you or we will be able to harm you. The rest of it is done by a tantra.
This entire fear mechanism
is perpetrated, is a sort of sustained in an institutional manner, is by a whole lot of other people.
Yeah.
It is those people who sustain that.
But sir, are these forces, and you mentioned the Jamaat, and the Jamaat has played a very important role behind the scenes in this, and evidence proves to that. But are these people right now, have they been countered, have they been negated, or are they just silent, biding their time?
Well, honestly speaking, this is a work in progress. A 33 plus year old campaign by the adversary and the success or the progress they had made to be able to undo it, push it back, clinch it in 3 years time, as against 3.5 to 4 years time. You see, we lost almost about a year and a half in COVID.
Yeah.
So we practically had about 3.5 years of real work. So that 3.5 against 3.5 decades is certainly not the, but you are right to the extent that many of them have gone silent, many of them are lying low, have hunkered down.
Another challenge, sir, is the drugs issue. How much has the security system been able to counter this drugs menace? Because we've seen here at News 18 that on ground the youth are getting influenced by drugs. A lot of this frenzy was also drug induced, and the adversary or the enemy was pushing drugs into the region. And there are instances where women are also involved, either couriers or users. How effectively have you been able to cut that out? We knew drone drops coming through with bags of heroin, etc. So how much has that been able to, controlled?
The challenge of the drug can be seen from two angles. One is, of course, the victims, number of people who are affected, who are addicts, and consequently the families who are affected. That is one angle of seeing it, one way of measuring it. The other way of measuring it is that the number of seizures and the quantum of drugs that are coming, the amount of money that gets pumped back into the system after selling it in the market. They are connected, but it is a very detailed survey to know as to how much, to what extent the drug menace has really affected the society. In very quantifiable terms, in very short terms, would require some kind of a survey. I am not too sure that any such survey, scientific survey, which would give us a very accurate figure is available or not. But the anecdotal evidence that you have on the basis of, let us say, the centers where people come for treatment, de-addiction, and from the anecdotal evidence that you come to know from the society through various methods, is that it's a challenge beyond any shadow of doubt that the senders from across are invariably linked with a outfit. Yes.
Okay.
So they are given large chunks of narcotics as some kind of a money, a currency, and then it is pushed inside, it is smuggled inside, and then it is, part of it is consumed here, and a large part of it is sent to the hinterland for purposes of money. It has also been established beyond any shadow of doubt. See, for example, in one case, if I can recall, 6 lakhs of rupees was sent from Delhi to be paid to a former minister.
Right.
And what was the purpose? The purpose was that the minister was asked to create a cell within Jammu, which is akin to Hurriyat, some kind of disaffection against the Indian state, to create some kind of a Hurriyat equivalent in Jammu. So it was a seed money which was being given. When we tried to trace the money backwards, where this 6 lakh rupee came, we found that the money came from a place or a person who was a known peddler, smuggler. And then further, when we investigated him, we found out that not only this money, several other amounts had been received by, he was both in the receiving channel of drugs and also in the reverse gear, the money receiving channel. So he was a very important node in which he used to receive, and therefore it got intersected. Usually the adversary takes care that the sending channel and the money reverse channel are usually parallel. I have been told from very authentic sources that there is a serious change now to pharmaceutical drugs. That's because heroin is no longer available as freely as it was 3 years ago. You see, so there is a challenge nevertheless in Jammu side. Why? Because the drugs also come in the reverse gear from the hinterland also. You see, the entire border and the seaports and etc. As far as Valley is concerned, as far as LC is concerned, we have made an effort that people who are dealing with it and are businessmen and living within the territory of J&K, they would not really be very safe and be able to digest that money.
My final question, Independence Day, one of the key aspects is respect for the uniform. I know the forces have really suffered and borne the brunt of wearing the uniform, be it the khaki or be it the military green or the fatigues of the CAPF. However, they've had tough times with their families going back to the... Has that respect returned? That whole thing of making the uniform the villain, has that changed?
All of us in the security architecture or establishment, be it the police or the CAPF or the army, we have, having realized it in varying degrees and in various ways, we have tried to address the issue. Say, for example, in police, we have tried to communicate that a mistake by us would be corrected. Access to us would be opened up. People not giving access or not accessible are would be adversely evaluated in their performance sheet. You see, many things cannot be achieved only by passing SOPs or diktats.
Yeah.
It has to have it has to be a culture.
Yeah.
It has to be a way of life, and that comes with sustained way of supervision and leadership. Something which the senior leadership passionately believes in, and it percolates downwards. It is not looked down upon. It's a the strategy is a combination of making it a formal evaluation parameter as well as an informal culture which we would exude, practice, believe and profess in our day-to-day lives.
Well, let's hope that bears more fruit, and salute to your forces, to your team for all the work that you're doing, and wish you a very, very happy Independence Day. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anand.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Jai Hind. Namaste, Jai Hind, and wish you all a very, very happy Independence Day, ladies and gentlemen. Bharat is on a course, on a path, a trajectory of growth, but with it also come a lot of challenges. What we tried to do in this very, very short span of time over the course of the next half hour is to try and create a platform where we could get some of the more thinking, experienced minds across four pillars. So there is policy, there is economy, there is security, and of course there is culture and history, and get their thoughts on how Bharat needs to progress further. Where does it need to go from here, and how will it do that? That's the big question, ladies and gentlemen. So let's, without much further delay, go straight across to them. We've got Riva Ganguly Das, the former Secretary East at the MEA with us. We've got Gautam Chikkarmane, economist, author, and wearing a lot of hats, advising the government on policy too. So Gautam Chikkarmane, thank you very, very much.
Namaste.
And Ata Hasnain ji, namaste. Jana Sahab, always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we also have Sonal Mansingh ji joining us here for a very, very special conversation. So now I'm going to talk less and it's time for us to listen. The idea, thought process to the ladies and the gentlemen is the blueprint for Bharat from your own perspectives, from your own sphere of influence, experience and indulgence, if I may say so. So let me start with you, Riva ji, because there's a lot that's happening in the neighborhood, and we are all wondering, where does Bharat rise if there are going to be so many hegemonistic forces trying to crowd around the space in the subcontinent? So how do you see the next, say, 23 years for us?
First, thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be here to share my thoughts on this important issue. I think let me start first by the world we live in. It's a very, very complex world and it is changing very fast. All our previous assumptions about the world have almost crashed around us. Today, you know, foreign policy is done not on the basis of any ideology. It's basically you conduct your foreign policy on the basis of your interest. National interest was always central to foreign policy, but now, you know, global alignments have become such that you have to choose your friends as per your interest, as per your, you know, how you move forward. So, moving forward, there can be two scenarios. One scenario can be that, you know, all the conflict that we see around us gets settled and there is one supreme power in the world, like we saw after the Cold War, which, you know, which power then is the primary power determines a lot of things. The other more likely possibility would be that, you know, the world sort of moves as it is and you have to be very quick footed and move with the world, because today, you know, your strategic environment changes faster than you can think.
Yeah.
And the way in which India is conducting itself, it's like a big power. India has just done a very successful G20. India is the respected voice of the global south. So there is a lot of expectation from India globally as well as domestically.
Yeah.
So from a time when, you know, people did not really pay much attention to foreign policy, when, you know, it was seen as something alien, we have reached a stage where foreign policy, people take a lot of interest in foreign policy. There is much more expectation from those who conduct our foreign policy, and there is much more at stake. So looking into the future, I think what Indian foreign policy will have to do, which is very, you know, intertwined with what happens domestically, which is, you know, unless you have high growth, unless you are economic powerhouse, nobody will take you seriously. So you have to grow very fast. You have to keep growing, and
does
that
this
is
strategic autonomy come at a cost? And should we continue to walk this path? Even if there is a government change or a political shift in the years to come, should we stay on this path, or what's your thought? Do you think if governments change, this path will be let go of, or it will be compromised?
There is no alternative to strategic autonomy in my view, because, you know, the earlier way of thinking that, you know, you can align with this, that and the other no longer that's not a possibility anymore. You have to, you know, look after your interest in a fast changing world where global powers are conflicting with each other, but who, this conflict, this kind of immense conflict cannot go on for a very long time. So how will this power equation work out in the future is something, we have to see. But for a country of India's size, I think strategic autonomy works for us. And, if you look at multilateralism, which has just not worked as far as peace and security is concerned. So the future is of minilaterals, alliances with like-minded partners on like-minded issues, and issue-based alliances, issue-based concerns. Because in future, what we have to do is, your foreign policy has to cater to your domestic needs for investment, to your domestic needs for resources, your domestic need for digital, as we move digital, and technology, cutting across all areas. So technology is going to play a very, very important role, and for which we have to be prepared domestically, which means have the right skill set, have the right education policy, have that economic growth in place and policies.
Where all of this has to come from one chain of thought as to who am I as Bharat. So Sonal Mansingh ji, do we know who am I as Bharat? Before I get into the economics and the security aspect of it, let me ask you this.
That's a beautiful question. Bharat. Bhavaragatala. For me, it is the amalgamation of all the beauty, splendor, majesty, history, geography, the sacred geography of Bharat. And the combination is so grand that wherever I've traveled around the world, I believe, I'm told, I've exuded that feeling that Bharat, the great country, the only living civilization over millennia, and ever changing, ever new, and yet ancient. So it's a very, very, what shall I say, it's a puzzle for a lot of people, it's a puzzle for me as well. And what makes Bharat tick even today, with so much diversity we talk about, so many problems. Okay, so who doesn't have problems? But how does Bharat navigate these problems? People think that you are sitting on a cinder box, is going to blow up, and it doesn't blow up. It again goes forward, and sometimes it even shows the way. Marga dikhana, marga darshan. It's a very big term, but yes, Bharat has done it. Bharat's still doing it, and I feel that Bharat has yet a very important, significant role to play, because the basic philosophy that binds Bharat is something so precious. It's something so rich.
But do we think of ourselves as Bharatiya? Do we have this concept of one nation, or are we still have not been able to evolve out of our regionalism, our language, cultural roots, or the riyasati mindset, if I may say so? Do we think of ourselves as a nation, and can every Bharatiya define themselves clearly? When somebody would ask you, who are you? I'm an Indian or I'm a Bharatiya. What does that mean? Do you believe that's important for us to be able to define and have clarity about if we need to go in a particular direction over the next, say, 23 years, by the time we are 100 years old as a nation in 2047?
140 crore, and you think that each one you expect will say, I'm Bharatiya. There's degrees of involvement, let's say, degrees of self-realization, consciousness. But I feel that if you ask a French man or a German or a Spaniard, they would first say, I'm from Spain. They won't say, I'm European. India is like Europe. Where in the world, in any country, you have so many spoken languages, 22 or 29 have the different scripts. Can you and I read Tamil? No. Can they read Bengali? No. So I think we tend to forget that India, yes, it's a country, nation, but with so many different components which have different ideology, different ideas, different format, different languages, different cultural communities. And yet there is a golden thread that ties everything together in a beautiful garland. So I think India is undefinable. And if you are asking who is a Bharatiya, anyone who lives in Bharat, इस मिट्टी से है, वो भारतीय है, वो भारतीय है.
जो इस मिट्टी का है, जो इस मिट्टी से है, वो भारतीय है, and you identify with the land. So now again the whole aspect, General Sahab, of the geography comes. But we are a nation which have nearly about 6,000 square kilometers of ours, which is not defined. It's got no boundary. So how do we continue to preserve this identity, this map in our head that this is Bharat?
See, Anand, first of all, thank you, Anand, for inviting me for this very important program, I think, on the eve of Independence Day. You see, the growth of India is something which is inevitable. And the inevitability of it is linked to the economics also to a great extent. We are looking to be $5 trillion, $10 trillion, and maybe much more by 2047. Having said that, I think stability is going to be the major factor, which is going to enhance this capability to achieve those aspirations. And it's not going to be an easy process because there are lots and lots of obstacles, as you have just identified yourself. And since you have spoken about the disparity, the large number of people within India, diversity within India, I think let me start with that automatically. Normally, I would have spoken with external security or with border security, but let me start with internal security. No doubt this is going to be a very major challenge for India. But I find that as economic conditions improve, as more and more people come out of poverty, it happened in China, I think 750 million people lifted out of poverty. Here, as more and more people come out of poverty, aspirations to a better life, the quality of life, etc., automatically these things will start taking a back step. So I think the diversity is an important aspect, and I fully agree with Sonal Mansingh ji that everyone who's living on this soil is a Bharatiya, deserves to be here and needs to be a part of the Indian growth story together. But to come to external security, that's where the major problem is going to be. When you start growing in this manner, when your nation is seen to be coming onto a platform, then obstacles from abroad start coming your way, and it's going to be starting from the neighborhood itself, and we've got a very, very volatile neighborhood, as you're aware, and externally too, since we will be a major power in the years to come. So for that, I would say you need to be sure that war avoidance is one of your principles, because there will be a lot of people who will want you to go to war. And I think, to quote our Honorable Prime Minister, this is not the season for war. This is what he told Mr. Putin himself. This is a time to look for aspirations and growth. And there will be people who will want us to get embroiled in these kind of situations. Avoiding those are very important. Why? Because the future is not about conventional wars of the kind that we are seeing happening in Ukraine. It's all about hybrid wars. It's all about ideological wars. It's about economic wars. It's about terrorism. And we are seeing the second cycle of global terror probably rising from Afghanistan, coming into Pakistan and coming in our direction. We have to be strong enough to be able to withstand that. How does that happen? With unity, of course, number one. Clarity of your national aim, right? And I would say an all-of government approach. Security cannot just be the approach left to the armed forces, the police forces, or even the diplomats of the country. It has to be, every department of India has to be a part of this effort towards national security. Having said that, I would also, since I am with the National Disaster Management Authority today, I would say one of the very important aspects of security that we will have to look at is the threat from disasters. Climate change. And we are seeing this year, and this is going to get worse by the year. So I think technicalization and technology in every sphere, technology in the sphere of armed forces, technology in the sphere of intelligence, technology in terms of cyber security, space warfare, every domain where technology makes a difference, we will have to make sure that we have an enhanced footprint of technology, and that should be the way forward.
But all of this will happen only if you got money in the pocket, right? So let me ask Gautam Chikarmane that at 8% growth, KVS has written India at 100 can be 55 trillion economy, saying that once in 8 years you can go up. So he's got economics there. He's put out something where he says this is a formula and we can get to becoming a 55 trillion economy, but we need to be a manufacturing hub. Now, is this all wishful thinking? Are we anywhere prepped for this?
Your question is so simple that it's more complex than the most complex question asked. I agree with Subbu. I have done my own numbers.
Yes.
I was making a presentation at Helsinki and the numbers were plus minus similar. But I think the error that both he and I can make, or most people do make, is that thinking that the growth curve is going to be a linear rise. There will be ups and downs like the Sensex, perhaps not as volatile. There will be ups and downs. To me, I think we are going to become the third largest economy within the next 12 months. Not because we have done very well, it's because Japan has come down. So Japan is now lower because of its currency issues, is now lower than Germany. We are going to cross Germany. We are going to add about $400 billion to our GDP this year, which is about the size of Denmark. Going forward, I think I am very optimistic and hopeful, and I see the tailwinds behind us taking us forward in the direction that you mapped. 30 trillion by 2047, 55, 48, my number was 48 to 50 trillion by 2050. And that is based on a growth rate. You know, when 1991 reforms happened, so the first 44 years from 1947 to 1991, we grew at 6.5% based on nominal but currency adjusted, as in dollar terms. From 91 till 2021, we have grown at 8.5%.
Yes.
And I don't see any reason why we cannot grow by 8.5% over the next 30 years, given the new reforms that have happened. There are problems, like farm reforms haven't happened. They will have to find a new way to do that. Land reforms will not happen. So we will have to find new way to create land, for instance, through the railways or the public sector enterprises, the surplus lands there. But otherwise, we've got GST. Within the next 6 months, we will have a direct taxes code. I think we are becoming far more efficient, far more digital, far more able to process the velocity of money in the economy. We are far better equipped than ever before. There are some smaller reforms that will happen. For instance, compliance reforms. Jan Vishwas Bill Act came last year. Jan Vishwas 2, which decriminalizes economic offences, will happen perhaps in the next, perhaps before the winter session, around the winter session that should happen. I think with all this, what is happening is that we have a young demographic, which is to our advantage. It is unskilled, which we can try and skill, but which is also being taken towards that there is no need for you to work, you just sit at home, here are some more freebies for you, here is some more easy money coming your way, etc. So the rate of for a country like India, where cheap labor is one of the advantages, and I'm not saying it should remain this advantage forever, suddenly we are dulling that edge. And I think COVID showed us what that dullness means when people just vanished overnight. So that is one threat. I don't think freebies is the way. I think opportunities, they are increasing at a very furious pace. Now, earlier in the discussion, there was a talk about unity. I think India needs unity, but the definition of unity is not uniformity. If you speak Bengali, so you will be a Bengali first. If you speak Kannada, you are a Kannada first. I don't think so. I don't think that's a very surface level way of looking at unity. Uniformity is not the India way. Uniformity is the way of those who have one religion, one God, one philosophy, one direction, one economic growth kind of people. India, as she mentioned, is so diversified that we cannot afford to have this. We are not looking for uniformity. You and I, despite heading towards one direction, will never think the same way. We'll never articulate our thoughts in the same way, and we shouldn't. That is what democracy is.
let me put it this way. She talked about a sutra that binds us all, a thread, invisible thread. So in the Bhagavad Gita, that's what Krishna calls himself as the Sutre Maniganaiva. So we are all pearls, but it's the invisible string that binds. What invisible string? When I say, what is it that will sustain? I'm looking at dharma as what will hold us up together, what will sustain. So if you were to define this, how would you, okay, why don't you start and then we'll go the other way. Go back.
So I think for economic trying to limit myself to economics is very difficult because I do want to step out. But as a $4 trillion powerhouse, we have remained since 1947 attached to following either Europe initially, then USSR through socialist policies, now USA. We have not discovered our own Artha Shastra. I'm not talking about Kautilya's Artha Shastra, but our own Artha, the Indian way, the India way. What is the way we deal with money? How do we grow? What is the meaning of money? Who is a Vaishya? We celebrate Bill Gates, we celebrate Jack Ma, but we don't. Our own Jack Ma's and Bill Gates, we spit on them every day. I think this thing about where we, because we were poor, we sought virtue in being poor. पैसा तो हाथ की मैल है, पैसा तो अगर उसने पैसा कमाए जरूर चोरी की है, etc. etc. These kind of narratives, they have to go, they have to end. We have to find our own way, and that is the India way. India way. It has a bit of capitalism, it has a bit of socialism, but it is our way. Look at people accuse the current government of being right-wing. Where is the right? There is so much left here.
Yeah, so much left here. Yeah, it's largely welfare. So
yeah, so
we've got to figure out something.
Welfare has to go with growth.
Yeah, which is a social capitalism kind of a model.
I think we have perfected welfareism within our limited $2,800 per capita base. We have perfected welfareism. We are a world benchmark. But where is the growth? And I think now, over the next 30 years, 23 years, if you're talking about Viksit Bharat, this growth focus needs to come. Welfare cannot happen without growth or through high inflation if you were to take more taxpayers' money, etc.
Etc. So very well said. So there is this whole concept of dharmic capitalism which is said, or socio-capitalism. So that means the Raja is supposed to fill the coffers so that the Raja can do welfare or dan. So can we evolve that? So that's your thought. Sonal Mansingh ji, and then I'll bring it to General Athasnen and then Riva ji towards the end. Ji.
These are grand ideas, and I absolutely look forward to that, although I may not be alive till 2047, Viksit Bharat, but we are on the way. I like that word, dharmic capitalism, because dharma has been variously defined and understood and misunderstood. But very simply put, the basis on which a civilization should ideally grow. It should be founded on that. And dharayati iti dharma, we all know that. Dharma, yeah. But what is that dharayati? So these are the code of conduct, code of cosmic rules. Now if the seasons change, that's the dharma of nature. If you do something wrong, nature punishes you, that's the dharma of nature. So there is a dharma for everything. And once you understand that, then the dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Now I put away moksha because that was added later. But dharma is first. If founded on dharma, then artha, as he mentioned, the growth story can happen in the right way. And then kama, all the needs, all the fulfillment comes.
Very beautifully put, but let me ask you also this, because even when Bhishma is advising Yudhishthira on how to run a country on Rajadharma, he says you got to keep your eyes on what your neighbors are doing, and you got to make sure your borders can't be breached. You have to ensure that you police your own streets too. All of this is there. Your thoughts?
You see the sutra that you spoke about, Krishna's, the sutra. For me, the sutra is that wonderful term called Bharatiyata, right? Indianness. We mentioned it very briefly. And I think no better example exists of Bharatiyata in Indianness than the Indian Armed Forces, right? I belong to a pure Hindu regiment. The Gadwal Rifles. Come from Uttarakhand, right? We have Padri Vishal Lal Ki Jai, the personification of Lord Vishnu, right? And that's where our war cry comes from. I'm a Muslim. And I can be a part and I am a part and parcel. My father was from the same regiment. We are a part and parcel of the regiment. We can sit together, we can eat together, everything we do together, fight together. I still remember the times, many times in Sri Lanka, going out with my company, the first thing we would do is, oh, we have forgotten, we have to go back to the mandir. Go back to the mandir, do a small prayer, come back. When you finish your operation, come back again, a little bit of prasad, a little bit of haj jorna in front of the mandir again. Now, all this is an inbuilt thing in the armed forces. And no one questions it. Because the space, it gives, Bharatiyata gives you an Indian space. It gives you your individual space and yet it gives you an Indian space. That space is, I think, the most, is a space which needs to be respected the most. The aspect of the Indian space.
No, I remember I visited a barrack and there was somebody who's performing ardas, another doing puja, and a third who's offering namaz.
Sarvdharm Sthal.
Yeah, the Sarvdharm Sthal, and it was just beautiful. It's just phenomenal. Each respecting the other, each approaching the other, and none wanting to supersede the other. But overall, still remaining very, very, like you said, Bharatiya. Now, how do we find this Bharatiyata in our foreign policy? Final word, ma'am.
We are blessed with a huge diaspora. I mean, look at this, people who have left India 150, 200 years back still feel an Indianness. This is a great asset of the Indian state, and I think we have, policy-wise, we have leveraged this very well. I mean, there are innumerable examples of how, the Indian community comes together to help us, in execution of some of our most important foreign policy objectives. So I think the Indian community, in fact, even people who've been away from, who've never stepped onto India, but whose grandparents came from India, still feel more Indian first than their own community. And I'm talking about the large countries which are called Girmitiya countries, the whole area which is called Girmitiya countries. So I think our diaspora is very important, and this is going to continue to be very important. And I think we all have this common identity of being Indian, of being Bharatiya, which when you go abroad you feel it, and you really, it's you feel it everywhere, whether it's cultural expressions, International Yoga Day, or you may name it, or or in terms of those Indians who reached the top echelons of their political or in their judiciary, whose forefathers came from India. You can always there is an interaction with them which is very, very special.
So you think we should leverage that more to our advantage and then use it to try and connect us more?
Absolutely, we are doing it, and it also means a lot of pressure on the system, because there is a demand to take care of them, which I think is our duty to take care of them, especially when they get caught in very difficult conflict situations. So the government of India is doing a very good balance here, and I think they are a very big asset of our foreign policy.
Right. Last final 30 seconds. I've got to wind up.
I just want to add to what General Saab said, that army and also culture, Sarva Dharma Samabhav, and Muslim Gayak, Dagar, he begins with Om Tat Sat. I dance to any, I've danced to Nanak Ji, I've danced to everything. Muslims are dancing Kuchipudi, Bharatanatyam, Odissi. Hindus are dancing this. So I think art is another field where there is no bias, and there's such beautiful togetherness.
True. If we can all bring it to...
I learned, she mentioned Dagarji, I learned Drupad from Wasifuddin Dagarji.
Wow.
And he's a Muslim, he's a practicing Muslim, but I haven't seen a bigger Shiv Bhakt than Wasifuddin Dagar.
Wasif's father and Chacha Ji were and the big ones, they were my friends.
Wow.
Big Dagar Sahib.
See, Haji, please.
I may just add that I have led 8 Amarnath Yatras personally.
Lovely.
Right?
So
So I'm a
fantastic.
Shiv Bhakt too.
Fantastic. I think this all talks about this aspect of Bharatiyata, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to hold together and we need to embellish. And from that Bharatiyata, that is the sutra, that cord, and everything else will be strung together. Thank you very much. Lovely conversation. Amazing. Happy Independence Day. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Co-powered by CNN News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio.
Good evening and welcome to Brass Tacks. I'm Jacob from the Bank Studio. The brutal rape and murder of a young doctor at the R.G. Kar Medical College and Hospital in Kolkata has sent shockwaves across the country. Doctors are up in arms demanding answers from the Bengal state government and the hospital administration. Remember, the case was initially ruled as a suicide, and when the gravity of the crime was brought to light, the principal, who did not even file a police complaint, was simply shunted out to another college. Moreover, now, renovations near the crime scene within just a week of the crime having happened, that has started inside the hospital premises, prompting the BJP to accuse the ruling TMC government of tampering with evidence. After the High Court shifted the investigation to the CBI, more evidence has emerged pointing to the involvement of more than just one rapist. But so far, only one suspect is in custody. Even Rahul Gandhi has come out and accused the TMC government of attempting to shield the accused. The case is being dubbed as Nirbhaya 2.0. A doctor was brutalized and killed inside a hospital premises that she was working in. Given the evidence and the questionable steps taken by the state police and the state government so far, does this case reek of a cover-up?
ममता बनर्जी किसी को बचा रही हैं। ये कौन हैं? ये लोग कौन हैं?
माफिया या क्रिमिनल एंटरप्राइज जैसे वो बिहेव कर रहे हैं। पहले तो कहते हैं कि वो सुइसाइड हुआ है, 3 घंटे फैमिली को वेट करवाते हैं, फिर कहते हैं कि सुइसाइड हुआ है, और फिर अभी एक कवरअप की जैसे एक साजिश हो रहा है, वहाँ पे कवरअप की कोशिश हो रहा है।
The hospital administration informed the parents that it was a suicide. Everything has been suppressed and not being reported anywhere. I don't know why. What could be the reason?
Will this minister continue? Should not he be sacked immediately?
আর এখন তো আমাদের হাতে কেস নেই, এখন তো কোর্টের বিচারে এটা সাবজুডিস এবং সিবিআই হাতে কেস। আমরা আমাদের এভিডেন্স কাগজপত্র সব তুলে দিয়েছি, কিন্তু প্রোভাইডেড দোষী ব্যক্তিদের গ্রেফতার করে তাদের ফাঁসি দিতে হবে। যারা অ্যাকচুয়াল দোষী, দোষীদের আড়াল করা চলবে না।
So here's what the postmortem report says. Number one, that there were wounds in private parts that were caused by perverted sexuality and genital torture, that injuries covered her belly, lips, fingers and left leg. Bleeding was seen from the eyes and the mouth, that the nose and the mouth were clamped, the head was pushed against a wall to prevent screaming. There were deep scratch marks on the face of the victim, the mouth, the throat. They were pressed to prevent screaming. Strangulation led to suffocation and breaking of the collarbone. Now, that does raise some very serious and very big questions. Why were the victim's parents initially told that the cause of the death was suicide? Why did the principal initially claim that the victim suffered from psychosis? Why did not the principal file a formal police complaint? Why were the parents not given access to the body for a good 3 hours after reaching the hospital? And why has the renovation work started right